Good evening to you. So, another new Prime Minister, and today another first Prime Minister's questions, in this case for Rishi Sunak. A lot of it was the same old, same old. Sunak showing he can play that traditional tune, "Aren't we great? Aren't Labour a shower?" And Keir Starmer responding with the equally traditional, "Aren't those Tories completely disgusting?" songbook. Cheering, shouting, a certain amount of kicking the furniture. This is the kind of thing that makes everyone at Westminster very happy. Normal folk go 10-pin bowling or to the football or the theatre or the pub to get that warm glow as the nights draw in. MPs go to Prime Minister's question each week for pretty much the same reason. Doesn't really change anything, but they love it. Bless. And actually, this time it was friendlier than usual. Opposition MPs as well as Tories welcomed Britain's first Asian heritage Prime Minister. And wonder of wonders, miracle of miracles, we learnt stuff. Fracking is banned again. There won't be more onshore wind farms. And in terms of tone, Sunak can be as fiery as any previous leader. If you thought that he'd be gentle or soft-edged, just listen to this.
When he ran for leader, he promised his party he would borrow billions and billions of pounds. I told the truth for the good of the country. He told his party what it wanted to hear. Leadership is not selling fairy tales.
And by fairy tales, he was referring both to old Labour promises on higher spending made yonks ago and to the Liz Truss unfunded tax package of recent memory. You could say he was trying to bury Starmer and Truss in the same hole. But elsewhere, again and again, he talked about being compassionate and looking after the vulnerable. He was giving, I thought, a clear impression that he will be uprating benefits in line with inflation, and he won't be making cuts that hit the poorest. He also dodged a question from Starmer about taxing non-DOMs. So here's what I think is going on. I think Sunak is already looking in two different directions. I think he's doing everything he can to shore up his leadership of the Tory party, and he's already planning, even now, for the next election. In terms of Tory party management, he's taking a big hit in bringing back Suella Braverman as Home Secretary only 6 days after she had to resign for breaching ministerial rules. So why is he doing that? Because when Sunak was campaigning to become leader, he needed, above all, a sense of unstoppable momentum. And the moment that really happened was when Braverman came out to back him. Suddenly, a Sunak premiership seemed inevitable. Now, if she hadn't done that, Boris Johnson might well have tried to take his case to the membership, and we might now be about to see him back as Prime Minister by the end of this week. So Rishi owes Suella big time. Just as important, she's become, for the time being, the favourite warrior queen of the Tory right. However angry the defeated supporters of Liz Truss and Johnson might be, it's very hard for them to move against Sunak with Braverman at his elbow. And the same goes, by the way, for James Cleverly, a big backer of both Johnson and Truss at the Foreign Office. So that's the party management. What about the coming fight with Labour? Sunak knows that Starmer wants to portray him as the super-rich leader of an out-of-touch party which crashed the economy and doesn't really care about ordinary people at all. Here is Starmer trying out another attack line that Sunak doesn't have a personal mandate.
The only time he ran in a competitive election, he got trounced by the former Prime Minister, who herself got beaten by a lettuce.
Quite a good joke. Somehow, however, Sunak has to change the out-of-touch, uncaring Tories narrative. Now, reading between the lines during PMQs, it felt to me as if Sunak is going to try to do this by cutting welfare and services by less than people expect, and perhaps by raising taxes by more, including, who knows, on non-DOMs like his own wife. Well, we'll see, but that would be a bold enough coup to ruin some obvious Labour attack lines. A couple of other points from Prime Minister's questions, a bit cheeky perhaps, but a tiny bit of Marr advice for both of those leaders. Now, Rishi Sunak keeps referring back to the fact that Starmer served loyally under Jeremy Corbyn, or the member for North Islington, as he calls him. This gets Tory MPs whooping, but it won't work in the real world. Old hat. Corbyn has been kicked out of Starmer's party, and if the accusation is that Starmer has moved Labour away from hard left policies towards the centre, well, floating voters won't be outraged, they'll be delighted. But Starmer, meanwhile, now needs to drop his incessant calls for a general election. Yes, an election has got a certain amount of logic, and yes, lots of folk want one very much. But until Tory MPs decide to commit political suicide, it just isn't going to happen. And if you keep vainly calling for something that won't happen, quite soon you sound irrelevant. So there's my advice. It was all completely free. Now then, I mentioned a moment ago that Rishi Sunak had taken, I thought, a pretty big hit by reappointing Suella Braverman. But how big a hit? And what is the view outside the Westminster bubble? Well, people have been calling LBC all day about this, and here is just a flavour of what they've been telling us.
So I was feeling very positive after Rishi's speech, and then his actions just didn't marry up with the words he said when he made these appointments, especially Suella Braverman. And I just think, do they think we don't notice? 6 days ago, she broke ministerial code, and then suddenly she's back, and it just stunk.
For Suella to come back to Cabinet, not any old job, but that job, I wondered what deal had been done, because it negated everything that he said at 1 o'clock.
I work for the local authority in education, and if I acted in this way, I wouldn't put myself to do my job. It wouldn't be fair. How can people respect me if I can't respect a code of conduct? The Home Secretary, it's the irony in that role anyway. Any role she shouldn't be in, but Home Secretary.
When Rishi said his speech yesterday, I just felt this overwhelming sense of relief and happiness that we were back in safe hands. And it was totally blown by Cruella walking up the road of Downing Street. I thought, what on earth is going on? And it smacks of something really underhand going on.
So not entirely positive then. And remember, you can get in touch to tell me what you think about that or anything else throughout the show by texting 84850 or emailing me on marr@lbc.co.uk.